There we are. Coalition Purple back on the air.
Yep, good to see you again.
Good to see you. And May 1st. So May
Crazy.
Day,
Yeah, a
right?
strange one. I never quite
May
understood never quite understood Mayday, but
I never really understood either. And then are you by chance watching Handmaid's Tale?
mm.
Handmaid's Tale? Or what's it? Handmaid?
Handmaiden's Tale, I believe.
Whatever it is. I can't remember the name of it. But they talk about May Day all the time, but that's they're trying to retake back the country, which used to be the U.S. So I don't know if that's prophetic or not, but it's like uh, so. Anyways, well, happy May Day,
Yeah,
whatever
for
that
what
is,
it's worth.
right? And I'm sure we'll be told what it is. Anyways, it's like so now we're supposed to be celebrating Columbus Day now again. Not
Really?
in, yeah, well, not in May, but they've changed it from it used to be Indigenous
Famous
Day,
People's Day, yeah.
yeah, or whatever. And yeah, so Trump's changed it back to Columbus Day. So there you go. So
Yep.
we'll find out. Uh, so what's going on your way?
Oh, nothing much. I just one thing I've been thinking about was, and I don't know why I was thinking about this because it has nothing to do with anything that's going on right now. But for the longest time, I had sort of mixed feelings about ranked choice voting. I think we've even talked about it in the past.
Yeah.
And I've always sort of felt like there's some good aspects of it and some bad aspects of it. And I always figured one day I would make some kind of decision about how I actually felt about ranked choice voting. And that day has come
Uh-oh.
because I found that I sort of was conflating two different things. I don't know if other people think of it this way, but I was conflating top two primaries with ranked choice voting. And for the longest time, it had me sort of confused because I really like top two primaries. I like the idea that everybody who wants to be involved in the race is in the primary, and then who the top two people that get the most votes in that primary can come out and go against each other. It doesn't matter if they're the same party. It doesn't have to be a Republican and a Democrat. It could be an independent and a Democrat or
Right.
two independents. So it kind of allows more candidates to be involved in the race. All you have to do is basically qualify for the primary and then go out there and get people to vote for you because you got good ideas. So I really like top two primaries, and I, for some reason in my mind, was conflating that with ranked choice voting. But they are completely and totally and entirely separate things.
Yep.
And so ranked choice voting is basically involves, voting for multiple candidates on a single ballot and then, ranking your choices. This is my first choice, this is my second choice, third choice, fourth choice, whatever. And then, as you start eliminating candidates because they didn't get enough votes, you start applying second, third, fourth, however many choices there are, onto the other candidates that are still haven't been eliminated yet. And so you could end up with somebody winning who's like everybody's fourth choice, which doesn't seem like a very good outcome. So,
Right. Yeah, but I think the flip side of that is too that, and I don't know, I've never really studied it that deeply, but I know the whole premise of it is it did elevate the opportunities for third and fourth candidates, as an example, so you can kind of get to that primary, the runoff primary that you're talking about, because
but
I
that's the thing.
think,
There is no runoff primary. That's what had me confused. It's just, when you go to vote on the day of voting to elect somebody, you still are making multiple choices about who you're going to vote for and ranking them. And then to determine the winner, it's just who gets not only the most first place votes in the first round, unless of course the person gets more than 50% of the votes, and then I think that
right,
decides. But then it starts being like, well, some of these people, votes get applied to this person, and then the other people's votes get applied to things. You're essentially counting ballots multiple times. Um, it's very complicated. And when you
it
introduce
is
complexity into
complicated.
the system, that also introduces opportunities for mischief. So
Yeah,
basically, what my conclusion was after figuring out that the primaries and the ranked choice voting have nothing to do with each other, is that I'm still for top two voting, where you have the primary and
Mhm.
then the top two move on to the final. And I am completely against ranked choice voting, where you're voting for multiple people all at the same time, and then somebody is correlating all these ballots together to figure out somebody who eventually wins.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's a no. I'll definitely want to look into that too, because I thought, and there's probably different flavors of ranked choice voting. Because I could swear, I think it was a New York had it where you could do all the different kind of adding and subtracting of votes, first, second, third, and all that. But you ultimately ended in up with a general election with whoever the two top vote getters were, unless through the ranked choice thing there was somebody that received 50% or something. But I always thought that there was a second go round, at least in the New York case. But I could be wrong about that.
well, as I say, that's why that's part of why I'm kind of interested in it, because it seems to be like you and I met basically through the Forward Party. I mean, that was,
Right.
we were both volunteering at the time. And
Right.
one of the things that the Forward Party promotes is ranked choice voting.
Yes.
And at the time when we met, I was like, I don't know. Maybe that's good. It could be. I'm not really sure. But it's come up over and over again over the
Mm-hmm.
years where I've had people talk about it, and I've always been sort of like, well, I think it has pluses and minuses and whatever. But as I say, I don't even remember what sparked me to go look at it again and sort of like try and figure out for my own benefit what actually was going on with it. But yeah, when I went back and looked at it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. So the top two voting thing and what goes on in the primaries and people's eligibility to be in the primaries has nothing to do with ranked choice voting. And it's ranked choice voting is literally just on the day of the general election, you're going to pick multiple candidates, and then through some arcane process, a winner will be decided. And it won't necessarily be the person who got the most first place votes. In fact, it's maybe even likely that it's the second and third choices of people are going to have more of an impact than the first choices of people. So I mean, it's a system that to me is making things needlessly complicated and needlessly mischievous.
Well, those 2 points are for sure. It is definitely complicated,
Yeah.
and it definitely the more choices, it's kind of like engineering, right? The points of failure.
Yeah.
You want you want
Yeah.
to try and when you're engineering something, you want as few points of failure as possible when you're creating something. And so, from that perspective, I hear you. Well, this will be maybe we can turn this into a two-parter because I could swear it was either New York where they had kind of the two-step thing where it's like you're trying to identify the main candidates through the ranked choice part to go to a general election. But you could be absolutely right. I might have misunderstood that too, but it is complicated for sure.
Yeah.
And I do think people do get a little confused by it although it's one of those things, I guess once you do it a few times, maybe it's not so confusing, um, but it is definitely complicated, more complicated.
And I definitely think that, as soon as anyone can come and say, "Oh, well, it's kind of confusing,"
Right.
that's probably not a good thing. You should probably just stop right there. Well, if it's confusing and it has to do with voting, we probably just don't want it.
Yeah, right. People are easily confused enough. I mean, even with just the fact that we have a primary and a general, that confuses enough people.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Many
yeah, for
things to
sure.
remember.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So no, no, that's good. Well, that will prompt me to go look into it a little bit more too. Maybe we'll have a part two on that because I just can't remember, but it is confusing.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. One thing that I was going to just talk about is going back to the third party thing. I went to a city kind of workshop planning thing this past week. It's over some downtown Vista stuff, but it really kind of brought home, and we've had this conversation, I know, a lot, but it really, and I would encourage everybody else to get more involved in their local government in some way, shape, or form, because it really brought home the idea that how much say and influence you have at the local level that you
Yeah.
just simply don't have. I mean, I've done my share of, and I'm sure you have over the years. They always tell you, "Oh, call your congressman or write your congressperson or whatever." It's like that's in general, that's a pretty big waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I've ever done it, I'll get some form letter that roughly is in the ballpark of what topic it was I was writing about, but it's obviously a form letter.
Yeah,
And I know internally they count, they're supposedly counting up, well, we had 500 people write about this and 200 write about that. But the sense, or at least the satisfaction I ever had in that exercise, is pretty minimal. And of course, you hear these instances where somebody's just constantly calling up their congressperson is basically
yeah,
a pain in the butt, and they break through a little bit. But the vast majority of people are just not going to do that. And
yeah,
so, I in going back to the local stuff, I think you have more influence at the local level because those politicians, it's kind of the reverse halo effect, right? They keep going up the chain when their constituents are like complaining about whatever, homelessness or whatever.
yeah,
And you end up having the same kind of influence, but you really actually get the ear of somebody who is going to actually listen.
yeah,
Now they may not agree with you, but at least you got a decent shot of them listening. And all the more reason why, plus at the local level, the whole Republican Democrat thing isn't quite as important because it's
yeah,
like everybody wants the potholes filled, everybody wants lower water rates or whatever the issue is, right? And it's just, it just kind of brought to mind why we're doing this, that it's really so important to kind of really focus on that local level.
yeah. But I also think one of the just sort of like almost a philosophical thing as far as small government and local government being better than national government. You know, you want the government you want is the one closest to you.
Yep.
And I think it has a lot to do with commonality of experience.
Yep.
Like if everybody lives in a town and everyone can see that, the dam is about to break and the town's going to get wiped out, then everyone has the same common shared experience that the dam is going to break and we need to go fix the dam. So that becomes everybody's priority. But when you get further and further away from the local, it's like, okay, well, I'm a national politician now. And so I'm one vote of many deciding national policy. And so I have to sort of manage this whole thing, not just what my constituents are saying, but what everybody is saying and what the party is telling me I should think about things. And the reason I brought that up is because in the past, when I have written a congressperson or a senator, I've always sort of gotten the same sense of things, which is, they ran on a certain set of issues. And, a simple one would be like taxes. They
Right.
want to tax people more, and I want to tax people less. So, for whatever reason, because of their party affiliation or whatever the grand idea behind national policy is going to be on taxing, you write them and you're like, well, I think you should do something to, curtail, the taxing. And they're just like, sorry, that's not, I mean, the whole reason I ran is to tax people more. And it's like, they have no interest in what I'm saying because
Yeah.
they don't, yeah, they've already decided. And they
Yeah.
haven't
They're in
decided
that.
because, it's good for their district. It's because of what everyone in their district is saying necessarily. It's because it's part of the national brand. And
Yes.
that's also why I think it's sort of important to have more parties because more parties means more national brands, which means more options to vote for somebody who actually has something in common with what you're saying. Because, I mean, our senators for years were Feinstein and Boxer.
Yep.
And, Feinstein obviously is and Boxer are both gone now. And it
Yeah.
was Harris for a while, but then she became vice president. And here I'll make a stunning omission, which is I don't actually even know who our senators are.
Well, what is Alex Padilla
Yeah, he got
and
appointed, right?
huh?
He got
He initially did, but has he? I think he has he run for election yet, re-election yet, and then Adam Schiff, your
right.
favorite. Your uh,
My favorite. So I mean,
who do you like better, Adam Schiff or our governor?
oh, our governor. Without. I mean, it's not even a question.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, not even close.
Okay.
Because the thing is, it's like It's interesting that you do that. I have kind of like different kind of like there's like lying, and then there's like taking sort of an arbitrary position to be persuasive about something. So Newsom, I think, is, in my mind, is a liar, but he's also someone who's trying to be nuanced and persuasive and kind
especially
of get where
now.
he's going. He's a politician,
Yeah.
and it's sort of like you take things with sort of a grain of salt. But in this is something that I'll put out to the universe and ask the question. Adam Schiff is just a straight out liar. I mean, for years he got on TV and he lied and in a way to influence elections. Not that this is good policy or bad policy, or I think this will work with us. He's coming out and saying I have seen evidence of misdoing, and I have access to it because I am on certain committees, and I've seen it. It's out there. We have the evidence, but there was no evidence. He's never presented any of it. And the thing that mystifies me is why Donald Trump never sued him. I've always wondered that.
Hmm. Well, maybe he does have something.
Well, I mean, if he did, you think he'd put it out there where we could actually all see it. But
Well, that's the problem. But no, that's a good point. I mean, but I think that's the problem we're having right now on across the board is and we've talked about this a million times about the transparency.
yeah,
Um, and it's like it has gotten more and more difficult. And that was one of my other notes on that I was kind of thinking about is that used to be kind of the media's role where they would try and force transparency. Basically, that was
Mm.
kind of their role. But now so much of the media is part of the whole political process now that
yeah,
it's not really the reliable source it once was, which I hate to say since I used to be part of that world many lifetimes ago. Um, and so it's dependent upon us to try and force that transparency because
yeah,
it's that again that's not a progressive or conservative thing. That's not a Republican Democrat thing. That should be across the board. That should be a people's right, period. And how anybody from any party could disagree that we need transparency. If you make an allegation, hey, put up or shut up.
yeah, absolutely. And again, that goes back to the third parties, and why I've
Yeah.
always been such an enthusiastic supporter of third parties, because I've always felt like a third party has the capacity to be a truth teller. I
Yeah.
mean, if the Republicans say one thing and the Democrats say the other, it almost doesn't matter who's telling the truth and who's lying because each tribe will believe what the other one's saying. Like,
Yeah.
let's say the Republicans make some accusation against the Democrats deny it. Well, the Republicans will believe the accusation and the Democrats will believe the denial. And
Right.
there's
You get
media on
nowhere.
both sides right. It gets you nowhere. There's nothing to say. But if you had another party out there who could be an honest broker and say, look, in this particular instance, the accusation is incorrect and the denial it is strong. It makes sense. It's it's interesting to bring that up too because of all these court cases that are circulating around.
Yep.
It's really interesting because you can you read the different arguments from both sides, and sometimes it just you can say, okay, this person is telling the truth in this particular instance, and this other person is lying. And it's funny because I was actually thinking I'm starting to ramble now because my brain works that way now, I guess. But there's the whole Letitia James thing where they are looking at her for mortgage fraud.
Right.
Have you followed that at all?
I read a little bit about it, but I haven't really dug into the details of it.
Well, I'm not going to belabor the point on it too much, but she's been coming out and making statements saying that the accusations against her are baseless. And I don't know why this bothers me so much because people, of course, anybody who's accused of something is going to deny it. But I think it's her choice of the use of the word baseless because we actually know what it's based on. She signed documents that were inaccurate. Now you might make all kinds of things that it's political or it doesn't amount to anything or it was just a mistake or whatever. But I mean, the basis of the accusations are the signed documents that are out in the media. So when she comes out and says that it's baseless, it drives me absolutely nuts.
Right.
But the thing is, if Donald Trump comes out and says, "Oh, we've got the goods on her, and she comes out and says it's baseless. Well, I mean, it's just who are you going to believe? You're going to believe tribe A or tribe B, or tribe D and tribe R. But if there was an honest broker, they could come out and say what I just said. It's like, well, I mean, the prosecution may be politically motivated, but it's not baseless because we know what
Right.
the basis is. And it's like, that's just kind of the honest answer on it. I mean,
Right.
but we don't,
Yeah.
but no one can actually come out and say that with any credibility because you're either on one side or the other. And it
No,
drives me nuts.
exactly. Yeah, it. You can kind of go example after example of that.
Yeah.
It's like the insider trading stuff that's
Hmm.
been going on in Congress. That's nothing new in many ways. Whether it was Nancy Pelosi or Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, on both sides, and again, going back to baseless. No, you kind of know who traded what when. So there's a lot of base to it, right? Or and we've talked about this a bit too. Trump's thing with the whole cryptocurrency stuff, and go on and on.
Yeah.
They've all just been involved in it, which always comes back to, yeah, need a third party, try and create some truth telling going on, and B, the reason why we need to have much better campaign finance laws because
Yeah.
that's all got to be part of it. It's all got to be part of it. I mean, the integrity part is just out the window.
Yeah. But like you were saying too earlier about transparency and how the media in a way over the years in the past at least has sort of forced some transparency onto the
Yeah.
politicians. If we don't have a means of forcing the politicians to be transparent or to be motivated to have campaign finance reform or to do anything worthwhile really, then they're never going to do it. So,
Nope.
and again, that's why I always go back to third parties. There has to be a mechanism. You can't just say, "Oh, this thing should happen." Okay, well, once you've decided on the thing that needs to happen, how do you make it happen? You have to have some kind of mechanism for it. The Republicans aren't going to really do anything different than they've been doing because they're the Republicans and it's what they do. The Democrats aren't going to do anything particularly different than what they've been doing because they just do
Nope.
what they do. So if you're going to get the groups to change, or you're going to have any kind of moderation, or you're going to have any kind of new ideas in the system, you need something new, and that's a new party. So I mean, I don't
Well,
know.
no, what I think what a third or fourth or fifth new party would do too is it makes it more of a part of the framework of how things get done because the days where you could shame politicians
Oh
because
yeah,
of stuff
no.
they did, that's long gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So you have to come up with some other types of facilitation of just bringing this to light to a point, not so much to embarrass them because they don't seem to be embarrassed about anything. But at least you could either bring some kind of force, whether it's legal force or whatever, and uh, and that's the only way it's going to happen. And you're not going to do that with just two parties.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing that happened recently is somebody brought the articles of impeachment against Trump. I don't even remember who. It was just some
Yeah,
random
right. It didn't go anywhere,
Democrat.
but yeah.
But yeah, but that's the point. It's not going to go anywhere. But it's like that's a real problem, and I don't think people give it credit to how much of a problem that really is. We've talked a little bit about on this show about the differences between judges and elected politicians, and the fact that the term that you get to serve really matters a lot. And the main check on the president's power is that the person only serves a 4-year term, right? So every 4 years, no matter how good or bad the president is, he's got to stand up, take credit for what happened during the last 4 years, and either get booted out or serve another 4 years. And so that relatively short term is very important as a check against presidential power. But the only other real check against the president's power is impeachment. If the president is really doing something bad in office, doing something truly criminal, and is like endangering the lives of Americans and doing terrible things, taking bribes or whatever it is that they're doing, they should appropriately be impeached for their wrongful actions. But if we've turned impeachment into just a joke that somebody attempts to do every few months,
Yeah.
and make it so political that neither party would really be willing to cooperate with the other, even in a Richard Nixon type scenario where, you would think that the person should be removed. That's really bad. You've essentially eliminated the only real mechanism for disciplining, a sitting president. And that presents all sorts of problems.
Well, and then you add on top of that to make it even less meaningful is with the Supreme Court decision, basically saying presidents are immune from almost everything at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, unless they have, a president literally killing somebody on video, basically, I
Yeah.
don't think there's any way an impeachment would ever go forward anymore because they basically have the out that, well, you can't, I'm not liable for anything while I'm in office.
Yeah, and the thing is, I actually, more or less agree with that because you can't have a president, looking over his shoulder every few seconds thinking, well, everything that I do could be construed as some, malfeasance that I'm going to get sued for after I leave
Yeah.
office. But as I say, but the point is that you can boot him out after 4 years, and if he's doing something really bad, you can impeach him. So the booting person out after 4 years still seems to be intact, at least somewhat. But the impeachment thing, you need that. That needs to be there to say, if you like the immunity for the presidents from the courts is supposed to be for official acts. If the president is acting and doing something as part of his official duty, he's theoretically immune. But that's true for senators and congressmen and judges and, all these high officials. If they're doing something in accordance with their responsibility, then they're immune from prosecution. Like if a judge sentences somebody to die, and then it turns out that after they get executed, they were innocent. You can't come at the judge and say, okay, we're going to try you for murder now because this person was innocent and you
Right,
had him
right, right.
killed. So, I mean, there is this type of immunity for all these official bodies, but there's always supposed to be a check and balance. And the check and balance against the president theoretically is impeachment. And if we've just thrown impeachment in the garbage because we just don't think it's valuable anymore, that's really bad.
Yeah. Well, but again, but even in the case where that came up, it's your definition of what's an official act. So
Right. It gets complicated.
it gets really complicated of what they're claiming is an official act. So is, if it was, and I think a lot of that really revolved around the whole election thing, and that was really a private thing. It's as you're a candidate, that's not an official function of being a candidate.
Right.
But if you claim that, well, I'm just trying to protect election laws kind of thing
Right.
by doing all this stuff, so everybody's going to, that's the one thing that's really come out over the last 10, 12 years, how creative people are getting in terms of interpreting what words mean and laws mean that I just don't think we had, until then. I mean, we've always had some interpretation, but now it's just like, and again, it goes back to a lot of these politicians, you can't embarrass them. So they'll just come up with any idea, any way, any route to kind of get what they want.
Yeah, there's actually a perfect example of that I stumbled across a few days ago going through the courts, and I actually kind of laughed at it because it's become this kind of crazy thing. So obviously, Trump is attempting to deport many people, and there are district judges throughout D.C. attempting to prevent him from deporting various people.
Mhm.
So one district court judge says that had a list of people that were getting deported and issued an order saying DHS can't deport these people. And so Trump responded to that, it's a week later or however long
Yeah,
ago.
right.
And then he's got the whole list of all the people that he deported, including, all the people that he said couldn't be deported by DHS. And then he states very clearly in each one of the deportations that they were deported by the Department of Defense, who was not part of the order saying that, it's like, well, so I can't deport these people with DHS. Well, I'll just deport them with the Department of Defense. It's
Well,
like
that,
clearly that ignores the heart of the order, what was intended. But by the letter of the law, he gets away with it. So it's all these machinations that are going on all the time.
yeah, and it's just the crazy. And it's the same thing along basically creating, however long it is, 1,000-mile army base starting in New
Right.
Mexico. Of course, the army base is only 60 foot wide all the way across because that's all the land they've got, right? across the border. And it's like you got to give him points for being creative,
Yeah.
right? But I think it misses the spirit of what we're trying to do as a country. But
Yeah.
that's where it's just we've got to stop this insanity and just get back to some common sense. And it's not going to happen with these two parties.
No. Yeah, no, as they say, the as time has gone on, the swings back and forth have gotten more and
Oh,
more extreme.
ridiculous.
Because I mean, basically the excuse, I mean, if you listen to the people representing the Trump administration, they basically have one gold-plated excuse for all this. Biden let in,
Yeah.
20 million people, and because of that, we have to use draconian measures to move them all out. And you know, there is some truth to that. If you're going to let in 20 million people and you don't really know who they are or what they're doing or what's going on, and you see rate increases in crimes and stresses on, different systems and whatever, well, now you are going to see draconian measures to remove them. And it's like, but when Trump loses in 3 years or whatever it is, well, what are the Democrats going to do in response to Trump's draconian measures? I mean, it could be even a bigger swing in the other direction. It's like, that is not good. And again, if you had a third party standing in the middle of it that could present some moderate ideas about, let's
Let's
have
just
some
solve the problem. Let's stop
right
with the
better
silliness.
processes and not so
Right.
much revenge,
Yep.
it would be better just generally for everyone.
Yep. I don't know. I don't know how much more people need to hear or see to understand the need to upset the political process that we have
Yeah,
right now.
we need to change our political system. That's
Totally.
what we need. And
That's
the way to do
where
that is a third party. Well, not
and
just
you're
a third party, but multiple parties. Let's put it that
multiple
way.
part. Yeah, because neither of the Republicans or Democrats are going to reform. They're not going to just magically turn around and, oh yeah, no, this is going to solve all the problems. It's just not going to happen. And
Right? They
we're
have no motivation to.
well,
They have no reason to.
yeah, and we're just being stupid as citizens to think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so after a while, you have to blame the collective citizenry if you're not standing up and voting for something different. And by
Yeah.
different, we don't mean, okay, I'm a Democrat, I'm going to vote for a Republican now, or vice versa, because that's not going to do it.
Yep. Voting for independent candidates and voting for new parties is voting to change the political system.
Yeah,
You
that's
may
all
not
right.
always win, but you're attempting to change the political system, and that's why you vote that way.
Yeah,
And hopefully, again, I've said this many times, I've tried to start my own political party, not successfully, not surprisingly. Not really a person of enough resources to create out of whole cloth a political party. But there are people that can do such things. And
yeah,
hopefully we can get somebody of good temperament who is, wanting to do something good and
yeah,
actually tries to create something that can be a national movement, that can have a good set of principles and policies, like the principles and policies we talk about on this show, hopefully,
right.
and can actually move the meter and make something better out of our political system.
Yep. Here, here.
Yeah.
All right, man. We'll leave it there for now, but keep on plugging.
Yeah. Good to see you again and talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Bye.